There is a spiritual law that governs the universe, a law more real than gravity and more constant than the rising of the sun. It is the law of faith, faith in something bigger than yourself, in a source of power greater than any man or any circumstance. And those who learn how to tap into this power, who learn to submit their burdens, their worries, their dreams, and their desires to that unseen hand, walk with a calm confidence that the world cannot comprehend. Before you take your first step, you must learn to pray. Before you act, before you speak, before you move, pray. Before you pursue the business deal, the relationship, the dream, pray. Because when you begin with prayer, you declare to yourself and to the universe that you are not alone. You are not a powerless wanderer. You are not a reed blown in the wind. You are a co-creator, a spiritual being connected to the infinite intelligence that governs all life. You don't need all the answers. You only need to pray first and leave it in God's hands. Understand this. Every great man and woman who has ever changed the course of history, whether they were kings, inventors, warriors, or visionaries, they knew that they were not the source of their strength. They were channels. They were instruments. They bowed before something greater, and in that humility they were given divine power to do the impossible. What's holding you back today is not your lack of intelligence, not your lack of money, not even your past. What's holding you back is your belief that you must carry it all by yourself, that it's all up to you, that unless you hustle, grind, sacrifice, manipulate, and control, things will not move. But let me tell you something powerful. What you try to control, you only weaken. And what you surrender to God, you multiply. There is a point in every journey where man must kneel. Where your plans crumble, your strength fails, your logic no longer works. And it is in that sacred place, when the soul says, God, I don't know what to do, but I trust you, that mountains begin to move. You've been praying, I know, but have you left it in God's hands? Have you truly let go? Some of you are praying but still worrying, praying but still doubting, praying but still trying to figure it all out in your head. That's not surrender, that's not faith, that's fear with a spiritual mask. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot pray and panic at the same time. You must decide. Will you trust yourself, or will you trust God? Will you keep calculating, overthinking, and exhausting yourself? Or will you rise each day, give it to God, and walk forward knowing that what is meant for you will not miss you? You see, prayer is not weakness. Prayer is power. Prayer is not begging. It is commanding the atmosphere around you to align with heaven's intention. When you pray, you are not whispering into a void. You are speaking directly to the author of your story, and he hears you. But you must leave it with him. Too many people pray and then go digging up the seed. Imagine a farmer who plants a seed in the soil, and the next day he digs it up to check if it's growing. That is what you do when you pray but don't trust. The seed cannot grow unless you let it rest. Your dreams cannot manifest unless you trust God with the process. You have a dream, a desire in your heart. Maybe you want to be free from debt, or heal from heartbreak, or build something meaningful that outlives you. Maybe you're seeking your purpose, longing for peace, or trying to break the generational curses that held your family hostage. Whatever it is, start with prayer. But don't stop there. Pray and believe. Pray and release. Pray and then walk boldly as if it's already done, because that's what faith is. Not wishful thinking, not just hoping. It is knowing that when you place something in God's hands, you've placed it in the safest, most capable hands in the universe. There are doors you cannot open and battles you cannot win on your own. And that's not a flaw, it's by design. Because if you could do it all yourself, you'd never need to pray. You'd never need God. So he puts you in situations where your strength ends and his strength begins. It's when you run out that God steps in. But he won't force his way in. He waits. He watches. He looks for the man or woman who will say, God, I don't have it all figured out, but I trust you with my life, my dreams, my family, my future. And when you make that declaration, not once, but daily, you begin to see the miraculous. I'm not here to tell you that everything will go how you planned. It won't. But it will go exactly how God planned. And His plan is not to harm you, but to prosper you, to give you a future and a hope. You see, the very thing you're worrying about right now, God already has a solution for. The job, He's already lined it up. The relationship, He's already healing what you cannot see. The money, it's already moving toward you from a direction you don't expect. But here's the catch. You won't see it if you're still trying to do it in your own strength. When you let go, you create room for God to show up. The ego will scream. It will say, but what if it doesn't work? What if I lose everything? What if I look foolish? Let it scream. And then answer it with faith. Even if I don't see it yet, I believe. Even if the doors don't open today, I know they will. Even if I fall, I will rise again. Because I have placed it in the hands of God, and He cannot fail. There's a boldness that comes when you walk with prayer in your bones. People will look at you and wonder, how are they so calm in the storm? How are they so confident when everything looks uncertain? And the answer will be simple, I prayed first. And I left it with God. I have cried my tears, I have fought my fears, I have faced my past. But today I choose trust, I choose faith, I choose peace, not because I figured it all out, but because I placed it where it belongs. Not in my mind, not in my hands, in His hands, and let me tell you what happens when you do that. You start to see signs, unexpected blessings, divine connections, supernatural favor. You start to move with rhythm and grace. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop begging and start commanding, because when God is in it, no man can stop it. But remember this, it starts with prayer, not as a last resort, but as your first weapon. You pray before you post. You pray before you decide. You pray before you respond. You pray before you build. You pray before you go to battle. You pray not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that your strength comes from above. And after you've prayed, let it go. Don't keep checking the sky for rain. Plant your seed and get to work. Act as if it's already done. Speak as if you already have it. Move as if you've already received it. Because in the spiritual realm, it is already done. The moment you truly surrender, the heavens begin to arrange things in your favor. But it is your job to hold the vision, even when reality mocks you. It is your job to stay focused, even when you see no evidence. It is your job to believe that if God gave you the dream, He has already prepared the way. That's not delusion. That's divine alignment. You may be in a waiting season. That's okay. Waiting doesn't mean nothing is happening. Waiting is when God is working behind the scenes. So don't complain in the waiting. Worship in the waiting. Don't stress in the silence. Trust in the silence. God is not absent. He's preparing something better than what you asked for. And if He's silent, maybe He's saying, trust me, not just with your lips, but with your life. Pray and leave it in His hands. Let go of the outcome, let go of the timeline, let go of your fear, let go of the past, let go of what they said about you, let go of what didn't work. Just let go, because the moment you truly let go, God can truly take over. And when God takes over, no devil in hell, no man on earth, no mistake in your past can stop what He's about to do through you. So from this moment forward, walk differently, speak differently, pray differently. Not from fear, but from faith. Pray first, and leave it in God's hands, and then watch what happens when heaven invades your life. You weren't created to live in confusion. You weren't designed to live chasing answers in your own strength. The moment you were born, there was already a divine assignment written over your life, but the only way to fulfill that assignment is through partnership, divine partnership, that begins with prayer. And it continues when you make the daily decision to stop reaching for control and start reaching for the hand of God. Some people around you won't understand. They'll look at your calm in the chaos and call it delusion. They'll mock your faith because they've never witnessed the power of surrender. Don't let their unbelief infect your vision. Not everyone is called to carry what you've been called to carry. Not everyone will see what you see or hear what you hear. That's why God gave the vision to you and not them. And so, when doubt whispers, when fear rises, when impatience starts knocking on your door, go back to prayer, speak it out, declare it again. Tell God, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I trust you will. Then go out and live like the prayer is already answered, not halfway, not with hesitation, but with full faith, full confidence, full expectation. Because God honors that kind of belief, let others panic, you remain planted. Let others chase, you stay positioned. Let others compromise, you stay aligned. Because what God has for you will not come through chaos. It will come through clarity born from surrender. It will come through the peace that passes understanding, the inner knowing that says, even if I don't see it now, I'm standing on a word greater than circumstance. If you knew what was coming, if you could see what's being arranged on your behalf, you'd stop trying to force outcomes, you'd stop scrambling for attention, validation, and approval, you'd stop questioning your journey, you'd realize every detour was divine. Every delay was protection. Every disappointment was preparation. But that kind of realization doesn't come through effort. It comes through intimacy with God, and that intimacy starts when you bow your head, not in defeat, but in connection. When you pray first, not when things go wrong, but before you step into the day, you'll notice something beautiful when prayer becomes your first response instead of your last resort. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop fearing. You start flowing. You stop controlling. You start creating because you're no longer walking alone. You're walking with a presence that cannot be shaken, a wisdom that cannot be bought, a strength that cannot be broken. And when the world sees your fruit, they'll want to know your formula. But your answer will be simple. I prayed first, and I left it in God's hands. You see, some of the greatest moves of God don't come with noise. They come in stillness, quiet decisions, silent surrender. You shift from trying to impress the world to pleasing the one who holds your world. And when you do that, he begins to pour into you wisdom you didn't study for, favor you didn't earn, doors you didn't knock on. This is how miracles unfold, not in panic, in peace, not in stress, in surrender, and the key, prayer. It's not just a moment, it's a posture, a way of walking, living, breathing, an atmosphere around your life. It turns average people into powerhouses. It turns pain into purpose. It turns confusion into clarity, because prayer connects you directly to the source of all wisdom, the architect of all purpose, the giver of all gifts. And once you taste what it's like to walk in divine alignment, you'll never want to go back to living life in your own limited logic. So begin to ask yourself, every time your emotions rise, have I prayed? When you're about to send that text in anger, have you prayed? When the opportunity looks good on paper but your spirit feels uneasy, have you prayed? When someone offers you the shortcut, the compromise, the quick win, have you prayed? Because when you live in prayer, you live with discernment, and discernment will take you further than degrees, connections, or strategy ever could. You don't need to chase anything. You don't need to force anything. You just need to pray first, trust deeply, and move faithfully. It won't always be easy. There will be moments when silence feels suffocating, when you feel forgotten, when you start to wonder if God even heard you at all. But that's where the real test is. That's where your character is built, not in the yes, but in the not yet. Can you wait in peace? Can you hold your ground without visible proof? If you can, you are closer than you think. Most people miss their blessing not because they didn't pray, but because they couldn't wait. They picked it back up after laying it down. They tried to solve with logic what only God could answer through revelation. They ran ahead when they should have stood still. Don't be that person. Be the one who waits. Be the one who trusts. Be the one who says, God, even if it takes longer than I want, I will not move without your green light. Because what's birthed in prayer cannot be stolen. What's covered by God cannot be touched, and what's placed in his hands will return multiplied. Your assignment, your breakthrough, your blessing. It is on the other side of unshakable trust, and trust is not a feeling. It's a decision, a daily decision to place your dreams, your fears, your future into hands that never fail. You can't fake that kind of faith. It must be forged, day by day, surrender by surrender, prayer by prayer. And as you build it, you become a magnet for grace, a lighthouse in darkness, a beacon of hope to those still trying to figure it all out in their own strength. Because when others see your peace, they'll ask where it came from. And your life will become your answer. They'll wonder how you stayed steady when the storm came. They'll wonder how you didn't quit when everything in your life looked like it was falling apart. They'll wonder how you kept showing up, how you kept believing, how you kept building when others were breaking, and you won't point to your intellect. You won't mention your credentials. You'll look them in the eye and say, I prayed first, and I left it in God's hands, and that was enough. Because when God is in it, the outcome is already settled. The timing may not be what you expected. The path may not be what you imagined, but the result will always be greater than what you could have done by yourself. Some of the greatest things God is about to do in your life won't make sense to the people around you. They'll think you're too quiet, too calm, too certain for someone who hasn't made it yet, but they don't realize you already have. You've made it to the point where your spirit no longer bows to chaos, where your joy is not tied to outcomes, where your peace doesn't depend on people. You've made it to the place where you no longer consult your past for advice on your future. You've made it to the place where prayer is your instinct, not your emergency plan, and that's where the shift happens. That's where heaven starts trusting you with more, because heaven doesn't pour out abundance on the frantic. It pours it out on the faithful. So make a decision today, tomorrow, and every day after, to consult heaven before you consult man. Don't run to the phone, run to the throne. Don't run to strategy, run to surrender. And when you do, watch how divine ideas start to find you. Watch how divine people start to locate you. Watch how doors begin to open that no man can close, but you have to stay in position. Prayer is your positioning. It is the daily alignment that places your heart, your mind, your will under divine authority. It says, God, I may not understand the whole path, but I trust the one who laid the bricks beneath my feet. And when you pray like that, consistently, expectantly, fearlessly, you begin to live in the rhythm of grace, no longer striving, no longer proving, no longer pleading for things that are already yours by inheritance. Let me tell you, you don't need to chase the promise when you have access to the promise giver. You don't need to compete when you're already chosen. You don't need to manipulate when you're already marked. But the world won't teach you that. The world will say hustle harder, grind longer, don't sleep, don't wait, take control. But the kingdom way is different. The kingdom says, be still and know. The kingdom says, those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Not those who rush, not those who force, those who wait. And what does waiting look like? It looks like trusting after you've prayed. It looks like waking up with peace even before the provision arrives. It looks like walking in purpose before the platform shows up. Don't let impatience rob you of your miracle. Some of you are closer than you think. One more obedient step, one more act of surrender, one more day of trust, and what you've been praying for will suddenly appear. But not because you made it happen, because you allowed God to, because you resisted the urge to open a door that wasn't yours to open, because you had the spiritual maturity to say, even if I don't get what I want right now, I'll wait, because I know who holds my life in his hands. When you live like that, you don't just change your life, you break patterns, you shatter cycles, you shift atmospheres, you become the one in your family who stops the chaos, who ends the confusion, who ushers in the clarity and peace that only comes from heaven. That's what prayer first does. It stops you from repeating what hurt you. It gives you eyes to see beyond what's visible. It gives you ears to hear the whisper behind the noise, and that whisper, if you listen closely, will guide your every step. It will say, wait here. It will say, speak now. It will say, forgive them. It will say, move forward. And the more you obey that whisper, the louder it becomes. The more you trust it, the more accurate it gets. Until one day you look back and realize your whole life has been shaped by guidance, not guesswork. You're not here by accident. That tug you feel in your heart, that's not emotion. That's God drawing you into a deeper place, into a life not governed by circumstance, but by communion. You weren't made to carry the weight of the world. That's why your shoulders buckle under the pressure. That's why anxiety creeps in, why fear keeps you up at night. Because you're trying to hold what was never meant to be yours, you're holding outcomes, you're holding timelines, you're holding pain, and the whole time God is saying, give it to me. I never asked you to carry it, I only asked you to trust me with it, so give it. Whatever it is, the thing you've been obsessing over, the thing that's keeping you in your head and out of your spirit, lay it down, let it go, stop rehearsing it, stop reliving it, stop re-strategizing what only prayer can fix. Because once it's in his hands, it's no longer in your worry. You've done your part, you've prayed. Now let faith do the rest. Would you like the speech to continue with more development around purpose, discipline, or inner peace, and once you begin living from that place, where you pray first, then release the outcome, you enter a completely different level of authority. You no longer beg for peace, you carry it. You no longer seek permission to act in faith, you walk in it, because now you're not leaning on your own understanding. You're leaning on a power that sees 10 steps ahead when you can barely see past today. But hear this, just because you've prayed doesn't mean you sit still and wait for heaven to drop everything in your lap. Prayer is not passivity, it is alignment. It gets your spirit in tune with what God is doing so that when he says move, you're not hesitating. You're not questioning, you're not asking for 10 more confirmations. You already know the voice because you've been in conversation daily. People often say, I don't know if I hear from God. But the truth is, God isn't silent. Most people just haven't learned to quiet their life enough to listen. They let noise rule their mind. They let distractions keep them busy. But when prayer becomes your lifestyle, not a task on your list, clarity becomes your default. You don't guess, you discern, you don't chase, you attract, you don't fear, you flow. That's the life you were created for, a life where you're not ruled by what happens around you, but by the one who resides within you, where setbacks don't define you, where silence doesn't scare you, where delay doesn't shake you, because you've trained your soul to stay grounded, you've trained your mind to stay focused, you've trained your emotions to submit to the Spirit instead of the situation. That's what prayer builds: spiritual maturity, emotional discipline, divine confidence. People often ask, how do I stay consistent? The answer is simple. You choose to seek the source daily, no matter how you feel. Discipline doesn't always feel good, but it always leads to good. Every time you pray, even when you don't feel like it, you are training your spirit to rise above your circumstances. You are declaring to heaven and hell alike, my hope is not situational, it's foundational. You show me a person who prays first, and I'll show you a person who cannot be shaken. They may bend, but they won't break. They may be pressed, but they won't be crushed. Why? Because they've built their house on the rock, not on the sand of emotion, opinion, or external validation. You don't need a perfect track record to be used by God. You don't need to have every answer. You don't need to pretend to be strong all the time. You just need to stay connected, and the connection happens through prayer. You may not always feel qualified, but God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called, and prayer is what aligns your life with the call. It's what breaks off the chains of fear and self-doubt. It's what reminds you that your past is not your prison. Your pain is not your label. Your delay is not your denial. Prayer realigns you with truth when the world tries to convince you of lies. It reminds you who you are, what you carry, and where you're going. So when confusion hits, pray. When fear whispers, pray. When opportunity knocks, pray. When the path looks uncertain, pray. Not as a last resort, not as a reaction, but as a lifestyle, as your first language, as your sacred rhythm, as your most powerful weapon. because the battles you are fighting, many of them are not natural. They're spiritual, and natural weapons won't win spiritual wars. You can't logic your way out of a spiritual trap. You can't network your way into a divine promotion. You can't brand your way into destiny. Only God can do that, and He does it through surrendered people, people who are willing to kneel in secret so He can raise them in public. People who are willing to say, I don't need to be seen. I just need to stay aligned. Because when you're aligned, you're dangerous. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere. You speak and chains start to break. You move and doors start opening. Not because of you, but because of who walks with you. And that kind of favor, real favor, can't be faked. It can't be bought. It can't be taught. It can only be birthed in the furnace of prayer and obedience. And if you're in the furnace right now, if you're in the waiting, the pressure, the in-between, don't you dare give up. You're not being buried. You're being planted. And when a seed is planted, it looks like it's been forgotten. But deep under the soil, something is breaking, stretching, expanding. And in time, what was hidden will rise, and when it does, the world won't understand how it happened so fast. But you'll know, it didn't happen fast. It happened in faith, because when it finally breaks through the surface, when your answered prayer begins to bloom, what looked like overnight success will actually be the result of deep, quiet, private surrender. The years no one saw, the tears no one knew about, the prayers that seemed like they were going into silence, but were actually building a foundation that no storm could destroy. That's the reward of consistency in the unseen. That's the harvest of those who chose to pray first and let go of the urge to control the outcome, and that's why you don't stop, even when the results seem slow, even when the people around you give up, even when the doubt starts whispering again. You remember, every great move of God starts with someone who refused to be moved by what they saw and chose instead to trust what they heard in the secret place. So don't let your senses lie to you. Don't let what you see make you forget what you know. You know God is faithful. You know He finishes what He starts. You know He honors obedience. So keep planting the seeds. Keep speaking the truth. Keep showing up when nobody claps for you. Keep walking when the road feels quiet. Because your harvest is not based on applause, it's based on alignment. And alignment always begins in prayer. You want peace that the world can't steal, pray first. You want clarity that cuts through confusion, pray first. You want direction when the path splits in two, pray first. Because in prayer, God doesn't just show you the way, He shows you yourself. He reminds you of who you are when the world tries to convince you otherwise. He calls out the courage in you that fear tried to bury. He revives the dream in you that doubt tried to suffocate. And He does it all in silence, in stillness, in sacred space. That's why the enemy doesn't fear busy people. He fears praying people, because a person who prays can't be manipulated. A person who prays can't be lured by counterfeit promises. A person who prays doesn't chase trends, they follow truth. And the truth is, God is not just interested in your survival. He's preparing you for significance. That's why He's training you in patience. That's why He's stretching your faith. That's why some doors didn't open when you knocked. Because He's not sending you into battle with shallow roots. He's anchoring you deep. He's building a foundation that won't crack under the weight of the calling on your life. So if it's taking longer than you expected, thank God. Delay is often divine protection. If you're being hidden, thank God. Hidden seasons are where power is forged. If no one is clapping, thank God. Heaven's applause is louder than any crowd. You were never meant to move according to people's timelines. You were meant to move according to purpose, and purpose is revealed, not manufactured. It's revealed in stillness, in obedience, in intimacy with the one who wrote your story before your first breath. That's what prayer gives you, access to the author. You don't have to guess your way forward. You don't have to carry the pressure of figuring it all out. You just need to keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep obeying the last instruction you were given, even when it doesn't make sense yet, even when others move faster, even when the reward hasn't shown up, because obedience will always produce more than ambition. It's not about how hard you work, it's about how deeply you trust. And trust doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it weeps, sometimes it just sits still when everything in you wants to run. That's still faith, that's still power, that's still progress. So next time you feel stuck, next time you're tempted to force the next step, next time anxiety starts to rise, ask yourself, have I prayed or am I just trying to perform? Because there's a big difference between movement and momentum. You can be busy and go nowhere. You can look successful on the outside and be completely misaligned on the inside. But when prayer is your compass, you don't waste time chasing the wrong thing. You move with precision, with power, with peace, and that kind of movement builds legacy, because this isn't just about you. It's about what flows through you. Your obedience, your alignment, your prayers. They will outlive you. They will build doors for the next generation. They will tear down strongholds you were never meant to carry into your future. They will establish patterns of wisdom, courage, and clarity that ripple through your bloodline. You may be the first in your family to do this, to slow down, to surrender, to seek God before every decision. But you won't be the last, because once you make prayer your first response, not your last resort, you start a chain reaction. You create a new atmosphere, you birth a new standard, and suddenly you're not just surviving, you're building something eternal. So hear me now, before you go back to your life, before you return to your battles, before the noise tries to drown out the whisper of God again, make a vow deep in your soul. From this day forward, I will pray first and leave it in God's hands. No more panic before prayer, no more control disguised as planning, no more giving fear a seat at the table when faith has already spoken. From now on, prayer will be your instinct, not your last hope. From now on, you will live from the throne, not from the pressure. From now on, every move you make, every step you take, every decision that lies before you will begin not with your voice, but with your surrender. Because when you pray first, you've already won the battle. When you pray first, you invite the author of time into your timeline. When you pray first, you're not just hoping for change. You're standing in authority, declaring, not my will, but yours be done. Let the world chase noise. You chase the whisper, let the world chase outcomes. You chase obedience, let the world rush. You be still, and know, because once it's in God's hands, it's no longer your burden. It's his battle, and he's never lost one.